So Rene, how did you get into punk rock and doing movies about punk rock?
When I first came to America, I'd done some features in Holland, and I kind of, in order to become more of an American, I checked in with Russ Meyer, the famous king of the nudies, whose work I admired a lot, and I became part of his little team. And there came a point when he had been in touch with some distributors in Chicago, and these people needed somebody to make a movie called Massacre at Central High. And they asked Russ, would he know somebody who could do it, right? And he said, yeah, I think I know a guy. He's like European, but you know, I worked on him. I took care of it. I think he can handle an American movie. So I flew over to Chicago, met these people, and basically they said, like, look, we've got this great title, Massacre at Central High. We want 8 kids to be killed in this high school, all right? So do you think you can take care of that? I said, like, well, you know, I come from a different culture, and we don't do these things there in general, and we don't kill that many people in our movies. But yeah, now that I'm here, you know, like, why don't I give it a shot? Russ was pretty happy with it, and I'd made sure I had like an actress with very big breasts, and so everything was honky-dory, right? So, and then like all of a sudden Russ gets a call from Malcolm McLaren, whoever that was, and he is asked, like, is he interested in maybe making a movie as a sort of a sequel to Beyond the Valley of the Dolls? About a punk rock band. A punk rock band, I don't know what that is. So he gets in touch with me and says, like, look, I've got this stuff here, you check it out, I don't know what it's all about, right? So I listened to these cassettes, and it's interesting, okay. He says, all right, well, look, let me just dump this thing on you, all right? And you just figure it out, what can be done here. So that's it, and the next thing I know, Malcolm McLaren moved in. My house became the headquarters of the Sex Pistols USA. They started to write a treatment, and Russ didn't like what he saw that much. He sent in Roger Ebert. So this thing became a complete camp bonanza, right? Like utterly campy. And in fact, there was nothing campy about the Sex Pistols, of course. So here were these kids who were like on the dole in England, totally socially engaged, and for that matter, claiming to be anarchists of some kind or another, etc. And like Russ didn't get the first thing about it. He would yell things all the time, like, "We saved your ass in World War II, you assholes! God damn it!" You know, like, and so on. And he just assumed that they just had to listen to him and Roger how to do this goddamn thing, right? And they were right in a way. He was right because let's be honest, they came to Russ Meyer, right? Malcolm McLaren came to Russ Meyer and said, like, make this movie. It was a complete mismatch. It was ridiculous. So then it wouldn't take that long, or the whole band was suffering from this LA syndrome. They were completely out of their elements here. And they went up to San Francisco for their first gig. And there it was like Bill Graham Presents and whatever. So you had this whole 60s hippie mafia there. And it was just bound to go wrong. So, and they never played again, right? That was the end of the Sex Pistols right there and then. So, okay, well, a lot of other things happened, which then ultimately led to Malcolm and I putting the pieces together a little bit, that eventually became the Great Rock and Roll Swindle. And by that time, everybody was moving on.
When was the first time you saw Screamers?
Brothers, I'll be down. Brothers, I'll be down.
At one point I was introduced by Malcolm McLaren to Fayette Hauser, who was an ex-member of the Coquettes, which was a gender-bender, psychedelic glam glitter band in San Francisco in the 60s. And she told me there's a band in town you should really see, and that was the Screamers. So I remember clearly how we walked into this club, and it was very dark, and there was very stark lighting, just a few spotlights, and on the middle of the stage was a guy behind his keyboard. It was Tommy Gear staring darkly into the crowd, and like droning synth sounds coming from his instrument. And before long, this punk beat came in, which was like KK doing his thing. And then all of a sudden, Tomeda got onto the stage, and there he was. I mean, this absolute amazing phenomenon. Everybody was completely mesmerized, and it was really as if he was puppeteered from behind the keyboard by Tommy, who, I mean, like every pulse and every drone that would come out of his keyboard seemed to trigger Tomeda's jerky movements, his anguished expression, and ultimately even the electrified stand-up hair seemed to be triggered by that. And in fact, it seemed like a relationship between Tommy, the puppet master, and Tomeda, his puppet, right there on the stage. The theatricality, though, like really appealed to me, and of course nobody could resist Tomeda. Tomeda was very genuine in the way he loved music, and he loved performers, and you see that later in all his artwork, where he pays tribute to everything that he was into. And I have to say that is actually not campy either. It transcends camp because it is so genuine and so emotionally felt. But at the same time, Tomeda would go out of his way to just forever express how much he loved Michael Jackson, and so on and so on. So there, this whole sort of campy thing comes into play again.
Yeah, because he always talked about the Bay City Rollers and how great the Bay City Rollers were. Very strange.
Right. So and it was sort of genuine, but it all comes from that campy sensibility. And Tomeda, it was very clear, really wanted to go back to what he would probably consider much more his roots, and that's be a performer. Right. Like that's what he had always been.
So at that point, the Screamers weren't playing very often at the time that they met you and you started working with them.
They were looking for all of them in a way were looking for a change because they didn't quite fit into. We just talked about it. It was not really a musical act. It was not truly a punk rock act. It was not truly a performance act in the way that Tomeda had been performing in the past in San Francisco and so on. So in a way, like, they were great, people loved them, but also from an identity perspective, it was not entirely clear what they were destined to be, let's just say. Yeah? So they found it a very good opportunity to come closer to a filmmaker, right? And I, on my end, still sort of baffled by everything that had been happening with the Sex Pistols and with Russ and whatever, and of course being very deeply engaged with music, I thought, like, okay, well, maybe we can do something here that is different. And I felt at that point in time that inevitably there was going to be something what later would be called music videos. And this was like a few years before MTV. And it seemed like right to steer this thing more into a music video type direction. But the problem is that it didn't exist as a medium. So the only venue for it was like live shows.